So here's the question. As a real estate investor, how do you build a business that you're excited to show up to every day, while you constantly grow your stream of passive income that you and your family can depend on for life, without having to leave your computer or even live somewhere that houses are affordable? That's the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. Welcome to the Virtual Real Estate Investing Podcast with your host, Brian Elwood.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the very first episode of the Virtual Real Estate Investing from Your Car podcast. So, it's good to have you guys here. I'm going to be recording this podcast from the car. So you're going to hear background noise and turn signals and rain on the roof and all kinds of crap like that. I'll probably be bitching about traffic, but that'll make it interesting, right? So anyways, my name is Brian Elwood, and I have a fix and flip company in the Middle Tennessee area, mainly Nashville and surrounding, but we go as far as the north and south borders of Tennessee and kind of in the central area. And we do probably 70 or so deals a year. We primarily do fix and flip, and we buy properties to hold on to for rentals. Rentals has always been our bread and butter, and our main goal is to create passive income. How I got into real estate is pretty interesting. I basically had 15 years of dead-end jobs and whatnot. You know, I was raised around Nashville, Tennessee, and went to the University of Tennessee, got my degree in English, and then graduated, went to the corporate world for a handful of years. Absolutely hated it, you know. Basically, you know, for every job I had, even from when I was like working at Chick-fil-A as a 15-year-old, to CVS Pharmacy, I worked at Smoothie King, Jersey Mike's, and another couple of pharmacies. I worked at Hat World for 3 hours and I walked out. Terrible job. You know, and then I got the corporate job where I could climb the ladder that everybody thinks is the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, you know, when you're in college. And after all that, you know, I was still really unhappy. And what I really wanted was to have freedom. Like, I just wanted to be able to control my day, to control my life, and to, you know, do what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it. I didn't want to not work. I like working, and I work hard every day. Now I just, you know, I get to work on things that I enjoy, but back then, you know, I was just really frustrated by the whole thing. It just felt like every job I had, there was a glass ceiling above me. Like I could just, I'd come to the boss with suggestions on how we could improve and just kind of get shut down, and it's really demotivating. You know, I would work harder and try to use all my potential, only to just never get a promotion, just kind of stay where I was at. And even when you do, it's just such a small little thing. Like they give you an extra 3% raise or something every year just for kind of a pat on the back. It's just way too slow for me. So, you know, by the time I quit my corporate job, I just, like, my whole body just ached inside. I would wake up in the morning, kind of stare at the ceiling fan and just feel kind of sick inside. Like thinking about getting in the car and driving to work. I mean, I had a 15-minute drive to work. I would wake up like 20 minutes before I had to be at work, and just take me 5 minutes to go from the bed to the car. I was basically trying to, not let work rule my life as much as possible and just box it out of my mind but it was impossible to ignore because it was what I spent most of my time doing. And so at some point I basically just had to quit. I had to quit the job. It was just taking too much of a toll on my mental and physical health. I even started to get eczema, which, if you don't know what that is, it's like an allergic reaction to the food you eat, essentially, although your doctor will tell you differently. But it's made worse by stress, as everything is. And I think the stress I had that job contributed to it. And it was just like everything came to a head, and I bought a house. I bought my first house while still working there, and I got the first time homebuyer tax credit. So luckily I got like $8,000 or something, like as one check, and that was by far the most money I'd ever been given at one time. And so I had the luxury of quitting my job because I didn't have a lot of expenses. My mortgage was only about $600 a month all in. So that $8,000 bought me about 6 months. And in that 6 months, I did a lot of soul searching. I got my health back in order and cleared up my eczema and started eating a lot of vegetables and stuff, and I still do now, and that's kind of a big part of my philosophy on life, but that's a whole nother story. And I started just really researching, other ways to make money. I started getting real hungry to learn. I was devouring podcasts and books, and started to my eyes started to open to the world of entrepreneurship. I remember, like, if you're not an entrepreneur right now, but you think you might want to be one, I can remember how entrepreneurship seemed to me when I was at that same level. It's almost kind of like this impossible thing that, it works for them, but it won't work for me, or it's too hard or too competitive, or, my job is too secure for me to risk it for that. I remember all those beliefs, and it was just real confusing. Like, how do you start a business? Do you just go get business cards and hang flyers at the bulletin board on Kroger? At Kroger, that's what I used to do, because I did try a handful of entrepreneurial things as a young buck. Like, I taught guitar lessons, I sealed driveways and cut yards and stuff like that too. But I remember how it seemed in my eyes, and it was really scary and vague kind of world. So after my money ran out, I got a job at a natural kind of grocery store in my neighborhood, and it didn't pay but like $9 an hour, but it afforded me the mental space to invest my time and energy into something that was going to serve me on a greater level. Because unlike the corporate job, it didn't eat away at my soul quite as much. I had more time. I could take breaks and read books and stuff. And for some reason, I never did that in the corporate world. But that might even be a piece of advice that I would give, but almost hesitantly, is that if you're thinking about doing something new, but you feel like you just don't have enough time or energy to get it off the ground, because by the time you get home, you're tired, and the kids need attention, and your wife needs attention, and all that other stuff, then I'd almost recommend getting a job, even if it paid a little less, or maybe it paid the same, but it didn't have as bright of a future, because you knew you weren't going to take advantage of that so-called bright future anyways, if you're really planning on doing something else. So that you can have the mental bandwidth to pursue your new opportunity. That grocery store job allowed me that. So what I did when I was there is I basically shook hands with all the entrepreneurs that came into the grocery store, kind of asked them what they did for a living. And, you know, I remember like following customers out to the parking lot and that were entrepreneurs, and, you know, I made an excuse that I was going to carry the groceries out for them, but I was bombarding them with questions the whole time. That was my main goal. And I kind of, you know, started to figure out a little bit about how they did what they did. And eventually I got lucky enough to meet a guy who was an entrepreneur in real estate, and he was younger than me, and he always came in the store at, you know, 1 PM, and he was tan, and he had gym shorts on and sandals, and he had like a gallon jug of water that he was always swinging around, and he had to come and fill it up. And he had a cool Mustang with rims and pipes on it, and, you know, he was just real laid back and seemed like he was in control, you know, of his day. Like he wasn't rushing or wearing a suit and tie or any of that stuff. And so I was like, what do you do, you know, for a living? And it's like, I flip houses. And it's like, oh, that's really cool. You know, how'd you get into that? And he told me, and I started to bug him, you know, about how I could maybe work with him or for him somehow. And, you know, that kind of catches people off guard, and it's an uncomfortable thing to ask of somebody, but finding a mentor is crucial. You know, you've got to have somebody that's going to save you all the time and headaches in this business and get you to where you need to be faster. That's a whole nother podcast episode or 3 that I could record about finding a mentor. So he helped me find deals, and or he taught me that what he needed was deals and leads the most for his business. Taught me how to drive around, write down addresses of ugly houses, send them yellow letters, basic stuff, talk to them, you know, and told me, you know, when I got a lead, he would help me figure out how much to offer, and then he was going to buy it, you know, if they accepted the offer. And I found a lead of a lady who had a house that a tenant was not paying, and he was addicted to drugs. He was basically kind of a squatter, but she knew the guy from high school, so she felt bad about kicking him out, but he was really toxic and whatnot. So I went over there, and you know, my mentor said, you know, you got to go take pictures of the house for me. So I went over there, and the tenant, you know, asked me, he said, you know, I need you to go buy me breakfast if you want to see this house, basically. So I had to go buy the guy Burger King breakfast, and I get back to the house, and there's a pit bull tied up in the middle of the yard on a really long rope, and the rope was like, I mean, it could basically reach the door. It was like, you know, there was really no way of getting around the pit bull. So I kind of had to fake it out. Like I went to one side of the yard, and then I diverted and had to like sprint up to the front door. I was being chased by this pit bull, and I'm balancing a tray of orange juice and coffee and carrying a bag of Burger King breakfast. And, you know, this is like the first appointment I've ever been on in my life. And you know, once I avoided the pit bull, the guy was, you know, still an asshole, and he had like the yellow teeth that were falling out, and he had a drug problem. You know, when you have a drug problem, you're kind of cranky. And so that wasn't any fun, but I got the pictures, and, you know, my mentor bought the house. It was like $70,000 for this crappy house in East Nashville, which nowadays, just for land value, it'd probably go for double that. But this was back in like 2010 or so. So once my mentor bought the house, you know, he invited me out to lunch and sat me down, a nice Indian restaurant, and whipped his checkbook out. And I was just rubbing my hands together like, man, I'm about to get paid. You know, I'd never made any money in my life before without having a job. And so he slid that check across the table, and I picked it up, and it was for $1,000 with my name on it. And I know that might not be, you know, a ton of money to some of you guys, or you're hoping I would say $10,000, but I was just so happy to get that, because that was, aside from my first time home buyer tax refund, which it wasn't really a paycheck, that was the biggest paycheck I had ever earned at one time, was $1,000. And I did it with, just a few hours of work. And so that moment sort of led me to the biggest epiphany that I have ever had as an entrepreneur. That was the moment that kind of opened my eyes to what I needed to do in order to make a lot more money, to add a lot more value, and to be successful. And so I'm going to leave you guys hanging here, because I kind of promised myself I would not let this be one of those podcasts where I ramble on for an hour long. I want you guys to be able to listen to these episodes during a commute and finish the episode rather than have to remember to come back to it. So I'm going to chunk this whole thing down for you and try to drop a lot of gold nuggets with each podcast. So in the next episode, in episode 2, I will tell you what the epiphany was. I'll tell you the big aha moment that I kind of had when I got that check that sort of led to all of my future actions from then on. So I really appreciate you guys listening. And as a quick plug, I just finished my first book. It's called Fire Yourself. If you want a copy, I'm giving it away for free. I just ask that you pay for the shipping. You go to fireyourself.net. This book is about how to hire your first acquisition manager for your real estate company. And when we hired our first acquisition guy, he literally tripled our business. We never had to talk to another seller again or answer the phone. We were able to spend all of our time on strategy and marketing, and I show you how to hire this person at little to no money up front, and just basically to pay them only when you get paid. If you're serious about building a real estate business that is successful, you have to have a full-time acquisition manager. It's a no-brainer. Without it, you're dead. So I tell you everything you need to do to find the right person, interview them, hire, onboard, train, manage. It's all in the book, and I'm giving it away for free. You just got to pay for the shipping. Fireyourself.net. Till next time, guys. Peace.
Want more? Get your free copy of Brian's book that is changing real estate businesses everywhere. Just go to www.fireyourself.net. Also, register for your free virtual real estate investing online masterclass at virtualinvestingclass.com.